Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Shelf of Many Things, where I take a look at independent and small press role-playing games or role-playing game accessories. This time, I'm taking a look at an adventure from Dark Wizard Games, Village on the Borderlands, which they were kind enough to send me review copies of. Part of their Maximum Mayhem Dungeons series, it is available in both 5th edition and OSR/OSRIC versions. Both versions are available in print from their website or as a PDF through DriveThruRPG. I will be basing the bulk of this review on the 5th edition print versions, although I will note the differences in the OSR version where they occur. Actually, when I went through it, it was very little except for the cover art and the maps and, of course, the stat layout. As an added bonus, they do have a sort of RPG recipe book, which I will take a brief mention of at the end of this review. As always, I will provide a description of the product overall, followed by a summary of the interior contents. Due to the fact that this is a module, I will attempt to avoid too many spoilers and provide simple examples of the sorts of encounters and rooms that may be found within, in addition to an overall outline. After this, I will conclude with my thoughts on the product as a whole. Physically, the module clocks in at about 64 pages with a full color and detachable cover and a black and white 2-column interior. The formatting in both the old school and the 5th edition versions is in a very old school style reminiscent of TSR era modules. Text is clean and easily legible with important information and rules references in bold. There are inline black and white illustrations as well as the occasional full page and full spread. The interior of the covers have maps of the region. It is a full color map in the 5th edition version, while the OSR version has a classic blue line, more grid-based map of the region. I think in this instance I actually prefer the OSR version of the map to the full-color modern version of the 5th edition map. In fact, many of the references and the formats within this module are very OSR inspired in both versions. As you can see, they are very similar all in all. Village on the Borderlands, styled number 0 in the Maximum Mayhem Dungeons series, is designed for low level characters, levels 1 to 3 specifically. It is designed to incorporate a home base style village as well as an anthology of nearby dungeons and mini dungeons to be used to start off a campaign. As such, quite a bit of the page count is focused on the village itself. This can be a good or a bad thing depending on how you look at it, since it does limit the amount of material spent on actual adventure content. After a very OSR-style title page, the author notes basically give a summary on what the contents are, similar to what I just stated. There is the Hamlet of Taldrin and the Inn of the Whistling Pig, along with 100 named NPCs, the map of the nearby valley, and so forth. There are also 4 adventure areas, the Hill Giant Highlands, Caverns of the Wicked Peaks, Ruins of Sternholm Keep, and the Forest of the Fallen Oaks. This is followed by a set of GM notes that details a little bit more of information on how the NPCs and maps are organized, with each adventure area contains and its background and what serves as a hook or a main boss for each area. There's also a note on how the stat blocks work, modeled on the old OSR and 1st edition style format, even in the new version. There's a set of hooks to get the players involved, 4 of them, with each hook having a different sort of theme and or lead. However, many of them follow the same sort of pattern that other Maximum Mayhem Dungeons possess, in that they assume that the party is a sort of typical, over-the-top, bickering group of murder hobos. While not always the case, a lot of this series of adventures simply assumes that is the default state, which I guess is on brand at least. There is a classic rumor table that follows, which has rumors offering clues and or misdirection for many of the adventures contained within this compilation. They are helpfully marked as either true or false, since they can be received either by asking around or as actual rewards for events in town, allowing the GM to reward a group with a true rumor on occasion. After the rumor table is a very brief Overland Wandering Monsters table. This is simply to offer some sort of option for the random encounters. I believe it is actually right here. There are only 4 entries, and each is weighted the same. It's just a 1d4 thing. This can be a mild issue since they range from simple bats to ogres with no differentiation for rarity. The Hamlet of Taldrin section starts next. It begins with information on the hamlet itself as well as its positioning within the Valley of the Moon, and summary of where it lies upon the map and how to read it. A few NPCs are gone over, such as Brunhild Helga and the Inn of the Whistling Pig, one of the establishments within the village. There's some talk of its former ruler, Lord Edmund Sternholm, who is associated with the ruins of Sternholm Keep, as well as the villager's current protector, one Sir Richard Dupre, one of his former knights. There's some information on the Hill of the Standing Stones, as well as a religious order of the sun that operates out of the area. A table of random village events follows with a variety of interesting circumstances that can be used to spice up a party's visit to the village. They range from the ordinary to the strange and unusual, including a few that really should be unique events and only used once or twice. This is followed by a major key to all of the NPCs within the entire product. They are listed by occupation, name, location, along with a link to which encounter they're referenced in. This includes NPCs within the village as well as within the outlying dungeon areas. The key to the hamlet follows, starting with a player background, offering a set of box text that can be read to introduce the party to the hamlet of Taldron. Like many of the maximum Mayhem Dungeons, it assumes the party is at least somewhat dysfunctional, not an uncommon assumption and mostly not an incorrect one nowadays, although it may be necessary to adapt it to your party if they actually get along. After this, the key references sections within the village in a very old-school style. Each section starts with a title indicating the nature of the building, followed by a box text that can be read aloud to the players, and then information on the inhabitants and the nature of the building thereafter. This takes the form of a few paragraphs with any stat blocks, important rules, and information and treasure found in that location in bold. For the most part, the buildings include a large number of farmhouses and other homes, although there are a few notable entries that stand out. There's a mystic camp with a wagon and complete with a fortune teller, which also gives leads on some of the adventures outside of town. Of these, especially is a shambling mound in the Forest of Fallen Oaks, so they kind of direct you there from there. Other notable buildings include a pawn shop, a set of bandits who have taken to squatting in one of the buildings, a winemaker, Fletcher's shop, jewelers, blacksmith shop, the Inn of the Whistling Pig itself, which is detailed more extensively later, an apothecary, a hermit's house in the woods. The Hermit's House is another place where they can get information on the adventures. Although a large number of the generic houses are simple farms and cottages, all of them are detailed and may be used to provide small adventure leads for characters who prefer to work around town at first. The section that follows is the key to the Inn of the Whistling Pig, the main inn within the village. It starts with a box text that sets the scene for the inn itself, followed by a description of the owner, Brunhilde Helga Olsen, as well as indications that can be used by the PCs to arrest, get rumors, quests, and more. Amusingly enough, although presented as a retired adventurer of some skill, Brunhilde Helga Olsen is simply uses the commoner stats in both editions. There's a tavern menu box text which lists not necessarily text to be read aloud, but more simply of a sidebar that describes the various things one can get within. It describes the various meals, their costs that can be acquired within the inn, and after this is a set of random tavern events which may be used to spice up any visit to the tavern. And then the key to the inn itself starts. Much like the village, the key to the inn starts with each room or section with a boxed text, followed by a description of what is within the room in terms of NPC stats, treasure, and special notes. Again, important parts such as NPC stats, treasure, and specific references are bolded for easy reference. Most of the rooms simply have NPCs listed, although a few such things, such as the storage room, might have incidental creatures, such as giant rats or other interesting things. This only really takes a few pages and is interspersed with a nice illustration of the common room and what it would look like with most of the NPCs assembled within. There are a few class-level NPCs which may be interacted with and perhaps used as hirelings or other quest elements. The first of the adventure areas is detailed immediately afterwards. It starts with the Hill Giant Cave. While the Hill Giant Cave is said to lie within the northeastern corner of the valley, no exact location is given. In fact, aside from the general direction, all of these adventure areas are given no exact position so that they can be relocated to the desires of the GM. The Hill Giant Cave is run by Chief Grumble, the Hill Giant boss, who is detailed after the description of the entrance to the cave. His goals and what he does within the area are listed, as well as his predilection for collecting monster heads. A few sampling wandering monsters are listed in the table for use within the Hill Giant Cave. Similarly to the general wandering monstering table, there are only 4 entries, and they don't have a clear and distinct gradient between rarity or challenge level. This is followed by a random table to determine the contents of an ogre's bag, as many of the encounters involve ogres within the cave. The key to the giant cave then starts thereafter. Just as the prior keys, and just as many keys thereafter, each one starts with a title and a set of box text to read to the players, followed by irrelevant inhabitants of any particular room, treasures, and special notes and rules. As before, all stat blocks are in old school format, bolded along with any relevant items and relevant rules references as well. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of details in the contents. I will, however, point out a few notable areas. There's some dire wolf areas, a prisoner in a prison cell that can be brought along. There's a well with a large spider in it, a kitchen with a hill giant wife, and of course the rest of the areas where the hill giant family lives. It is a very straightforward sort of dungeon. The next adventure area, the ruins of Sternholm Keeps, follows. This one, situated to the northwest section of the valley, details the ruins of the former ruler's keep. Wherein the prior adventure area was a very straightforward lair of a hill giant and his ogre thugs, the history of Sternholm Keep involves the former ruler as well as a cursed sword. The cursed sword still dwells within the place, which has now been overrun by bandits. All of this is detailed in the initial description of the area, along with a detailed write-up of the intelligent cursed greatsword Illumina Me Nemezi. As the initial write-ups conclude, another Wandering Monster table is presented. It just has 4 entries in a straightforward list. Like the other areas, these are mostly low-level encounters, indicating this may be a more low-level suited area. So instead of having a mix of low-level and high-level, it's just purely low-level. There is a brief write-up of pit traps, as well as their effects on how to identify them, as they are common within the ruins. The key to the ruins once more simply details each room after a brief boxed write-up with a title, box text to read to the players, and then contents of the room with items, stat blocks, and more in bold as usual. The ruins contain mostly bandits, with a few rooms of animals, some traps such as a slicing blade, as well as the leader of the bandits, Warwick Diamond Fingers. He is actually wielding the cursed greatsword, which makes him a bit of a challenge. There's also a magical pool that boosts various abilities while weakening others. The third adventure is the Forest of the Fallen Oaks in the southeast of the Valley of the Moon. It contains the grave of a mystic child and has been overrun recently by a large shambling mound. This has resulted in the presence of an aura of evil magic that has slowly corrupted the forest. After the brief write-up, there's a 4-entry Wandering Monster table, like the prior one, and is mostly more constrained than previous ones in this volume. The key to the forest then follows with the usual title, text block, and bold enhanced descriptions. The forest presents some more enchanted and almost haunted seeming rooms with an abandoned druid's hut, some goblin traps, various undead, a bandit who has betrayed his fellows, some other random bandits, the grave of Luna, the mystic child, as well as the shambling mound itself. The final adventure area, the Caverns of the Wicked Peaks, is a set of mountains stretching along the southwest region of the Valley of the Moon. This description of the mountains themselves covers them and the malevolent energy found therein. The mountains are home to a population of myconids under the control of a drow alchemist named Linzabar. He produces fungal mushrooms that have mind control and other effects, and has been using them to spread his influence throughout the valley. A description of the honey spot mushrooms follows, as well as their effects, basically a sort of mind control that can impact the consumer. This is followed by a description of the wandering monsters, as well as the table therein. This time there are 4 entries, but they're of a more varied and unique style, including a floating gas servant, various bats, and other mushroom-based material. As usual, the key indicates walk up, and then each room detailed with the title, descriptive passage, and then room information, along with bolded material. This one includes some spiders, some various mushroom encounters, a strange musical device that operates almost like a Simon Says style game, a camp of subdued bandits, an adventurer that can be rescued from aggressive wildlife, a garden gnome statue, a giant crab, and of course the Dark Elf himself. After these, there are maps of the Inn of the Whistling Pig, the 4 adventure areas, as well as a map of the valley as a whole. This entire book concludes with the OGL license. So with that said, what do I think of the product? As some of you know, I've had mixed but generally positive opinions on the quality of Dark Wizard products before, while still appreciating the old school adventure feel that they go for. That follows through with this product as well. In terms of the physical qualities of the product, the modules themselves in terms of printing are very well done. They are attractive, and despite how battered these two may appear, this was after some storage and transportation issues on my end and should not be held to their printing. I am impressed with how well they held up for what that was. At least at least as well as any other old school module would have back in the day, which is to say, enough to use a few times, but not really something that you want to go over and handle over and over again for months on end. That's a good way to have something fall apart. I've had old school modules fall apart just like that. While the printing is clear and the format is spot on for the old school feel, unfortunately the actual contents themselves suffer from certain things I've commented on in terms of Dark Wizard products before. That is to say that the writing is a little bit on the direct side and assumptive on player character choices and actions, although perhaps not so blatant in this product as in their past ones, and that's an improvement that I can appreciate. They're doing much better on that regard. There's also a fair number of spelling errors, and while they're very, very noticeable, I'm not certain how much they detract from the overall usage of the adventure. I've said it before, and I will say it again, copy editing is very much something people need nowadays. Not just Dark Wizard games, but a lot of the products I'm receiving has like glaring errors in it, and mechanical errors, and it's getting kind of old at this point. I will also note that as far as the backstory on the many adventures in the village in this Borderlands project goes, it gets to the point a lot faster and is more succinct than in prior adventures I've reviewed from Dark Wizard games. Again, an overall improvement in my estimation. Very, very good. As far as the content itself goes, half of this product is devoted to the starting village itself, which leaves very little room to flesh out the attached adventures. This means that each of these adventures is very short, with several to a dozen rooms or encounter areas at most in each one. I can appreciate what they were going for, since the village on the Borderlands very much reminds me of things like the original Keep on the Borderlands, as well as the village of Hamlet. Both classic modules sought to present a fleshed out starting area, as well as some initial adventures to go on. In that sense, I think that the village on the Borderlands does an admirable job, at least as admirable as one could wish. The adventures themselves are incredibly brief, as I mentioned, and while 3 of them are more suited to lower level characters, the Hill Giant one at least will necessarily be the capstone of the entire arrangement in terms of its challenge level, although come to think of it, since they're just Hill Giants and Ogres, they're also not going to do a lot of strange stuff, so, they may be undertaken by a lower level party. This is somewhat unfortunate since, as I said, that is the simplest of the adventures. If it's going to be the last one in terms of challenge, it's probably going to be... it strikes me as one that could be used earlier if you just ignore the challenge of it. I'm personally of the opinion that while each of these adventures is fine in and of itself, the product would probably have been better suited to simply have 2 adventures of a more sizable length. However, with the village as detailed as it is, it can easily be the focal point for the addition of your own adventures, or for use as a starting point for other maximum Mayhem Dungeons or other dungeons in general of similar level. The village itself I found rather curious. As I mentioned here, there are a few NPCs that are considered adventurers or like, but some of these are treated as just level 0 commoners, even though they've got like an adventuring background, while others are given full class levels. I believe there's a difference between the ones that are going to adventure with you and the ones that are just in the background. There's also an awful lot of very generic housing and farms. Now that's to be expected of any medieval village, with a few farmsteads that contain something other than commoners are likely only to be found out if the characters are undergoing a door-to-door search, specifically there. For instance, there are a pair of bandits pretending to be a set of recently moved-in farmers. However, one would never really know that unless you were basically going door-to-door investigating. I'm not sure if this cheapens the village itself, but I would have liked to have seen more variation within it. Aside from that minor criticism, the village serves as a very nice starting point for any campaign. It's got everything you need to go adventuring. I'm willing to at least minorly overlook some of the quality issues in the writing, as it has not really detracted from the overall presentation or usability in this adventure, and is somewhat of an improvement to their prior offerings. As I said, I've had more trouble with their writing in the past, and I say that as somebody who likes their adventures. Don't get me wrong, I like their adventures, and the only reason I call out some of the writing in the past is because I like to see them improve, and they've improved. So, there is that. And I'm actually having a hard time finding any old school adventures nowadays that aren't even more riddled with editing errors, so it's it's better than par, I guess. So I guess the question really is whether the offering is worth your money. I'll admit it's a little pricey for a Maximum Mayhem module, even with its 4 so-called adventures within, because they're so brief and the starting village being somewhat generic in most of its arrangement. I kind of have a hard time recommending it unless you absolutely need a campaign starter that you can use right out of the box. That having been said, it does make a solid campaign starter right out of the box, and will easily take characters up to 2nd or 3rd level with very little need for modification. And if that's what you're looking for and you're willing to pay the price, then it does that job very well. I mean, it is what it is. In that respect, at least, if it's what you're looking for, then by all means. For the only moderately interested, I'd personally wait until it was on sale or something. So, that's my take on it. Ordinarily, I would wrap things up there, but I did promise that I would take a brief look at another offering from Maximum Mayhem Dungeons, the one with the recipes from the Inn of the Whistling Pig. It is included with the PDF offering. It's also available to purchase separately, and is a collection of 16 real-world recipes. Now, it is presented in full color, with each recipe offering a picture of what it's supposed to look like, along with the instructions and so forth. I am not what you might call a foodie, so my initial impression was that it was a collection of simple, but relatively wholesome meals one might find at a tavern. One of my friends, however, is indeed a foodie and is experienced with cooking in a variety of circumstances beyond just, making, basic dinner, as well as exposure to a sort of gourmand culture. I mean, this dude, I don't know that he has training in gourmet stuff, but I know his family does. So I offered him the recipe for his evaluation. And after looking at it, he basically confirmed my initial take. There's nothing special in here, but they are wholesome, relatively simple, and filling meals one may expect to find at your inn or tavern. I don't know what I expected. I'm not sure how useful these would be on a day-to-day basis. They can certainly be used if one wants to set the stage for adventuring in an inn or any D&D kind of fancy game. Glancing over the cost involved, again, I'm not entirely sure it's merited, but I can leave that to the buyer's own discretion. At the very least, these recipes shouldn't kill the average person, which is more than I can say of some of the other D&D themed real-life recipe books I've seen on the market. Like, some of that stuff, wow. I don't know if I want to gamble with my life on some of those things. But this one, at least, most of the stuff in here looked very good. So with that having been said, I will wrap things up here. This has been the RPG Crawler with my review of Village on the Borderlands, as you see, available in both OSR and 5th edition versions. As always, I will put links to where you can get it below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content. Until next time, take care and goodbye. And if you are still watching, I would like to take the opportunity to thank my supporters, the top tiers of which are listed on the screen, without whose support I would not have been able to offer the variety of content that I have on this channel throughout the years. If you're feeling particularly generous and would like to join them, you can support the channel. There are a variety of options to do so. I have a Patreon, a Subscribestar, as well as channel memberships enabled. If you are not in a position to contribute, simply leaving a like, a comment, or sharing my videos are all wonderful ways to help the channel grow without spending a dime, and are all greatly appreciated.